Stress. Stress is a physical, mental, or emotional factor that causes bodily tension. Stress can be either positive or negative. Therefore, some individuals' performances can be hindered by stress, and some can use it as a driving force for them to succeed. There are two types of stress: eustress and distress. Eustress is positive or good stress. For example, you're faced with a demand. This might be a penalty kick. You perceive this demand as a challenge for you to overcome. This increases your arousal and motivation, resulting in a positive outcome through you scoring the penalty. Distress is a negative stress. For example, in this case the penalty kick is still the demand, but your perception of that challenge differs. You perceive this as something negative or a threat to you, and you begin to worry. This increases your arousal in a negative way as it increases the stress and worry surrounding your potential to fail. Finally, this results in a decrease in performance as the outcome is you missing the penalty. The causes of stress. So there's internal, external, personal, occupational, and sports environment. Internal stress is stress you're causing to yourself without the influence of others. This might be illness or lack of sleep. These cause you to be less functional, making everyday tasks more stressful. Other examples might be that you're overly self-critical. You might put too much pressure on yourself to succeed, to the point where it causes you distress when you can't achieve everything you set out to achieve. External stress is stress influenced, caused by others. This might be family putting pressure on you to succeed or follow a certain path, or it might be the pressure to succeed in exams. Any external major life events can impact stress levels. Personal stress is stress from your personal life. This would be events in your family or friends or your own health. Occupational stress is stress surrounding your job. This might be a lack of satisfaction with your role or pay, or it might be an overload of work. Sports environment stress is stress surrounding the nature of your competition. This might be the importance of the event, so like I said before, a cup final, or this might be the opposition. For example, you're facing your rivals. Both these factors can heighten your stress. Stress in sport. The factors that cause stress in sport are lack of appreciation, rivalry, frustration, fatigue, managers, officials, and teammates. Lack of appreciation might be that you feel you're working to the best of your ability and performing really well, and you feel that you're underappreciated. Perhaps the crowd isn't supporting you to the degree that you would like, or perhaps teammates and managers aren't supporting you either. Rivalry is another stress. So like I said, if you are facing your club's rival, you're likely to become more stressed because there's a higher importance for the fans, for you, for your manager, for you to win that game. So failure would cause more worry. So that's why that increases stress. Frustration. So if you keep missing a goal, that's going to cause you a lot of stress, which can have a negative impact on your performance. Fatigue. So if you've played a full 90 minutes and then in football and then you have to go to extra time, that can cause you stress. Managers, so perhaps the manager is giving you instructions that you feel that you can't follow or that you disagree with, that can cause you stress, or they might be getting annoyed with you for decisions that you're making on the pitch, which can cause you stress. Officials, so if you feel the referee keeps making the wrong decision, that's going to cause you unnecessary stress, and because you're getting angry at the decisions made and feel that they're unfair. And finally, teammates. So if you're arguing amongst each other because of poor performance, or if they're getting angry at you for your performance, or if they're performing badly and you're getting annoyed by that, that can cause you stress as well. So the symptoms of stress. So the major stresses in sport are competition, conflict, frustration, climate, and fatigue or injury. Competition stress might be stress surrounding the importance of the fixture. So again, perhaps a basketballer might be stressed about a game against their rivals as there is an increased pressure to win. Conflict stress, so that might be within the team, that might be conflict between your teammates because you're performing poorly. That can cause you extreme stress as well. Frustration, so frustration might be, again, like I mentioned previously, if you are a netballer, for example, and you keep missing your shots and your goal shoot, that's going to cause you stress because there's so much pressure on you to score because it's only you and one other that can shoot. Climate. So climate is like if it's hot. So if it's hot and you're playing outside, that could cause you to sweat a lot more. Losing those electrolytes means that you can't perform as well. You have less energy, which could cause a decrease in performance, making you stressed. As you are fatigued as well. Or if it's raining, that can cause you extreme stress because your visibility is reduced, so you can't see as well and perform as well. And finally, fatigue and injury, so that can be a major stressor because it means that you physically cannot continue in your performance anymore. That might put you out for an extensive period of time dependent on the injury, which is frustrating and stressful. The symptoms of stress. So, general adaptation syndrome, established in 1956, implies that there are 3 stages to our body's response to stress. These stages are alarm reaction, resistance, and exhaustion. Alarm reaction is the stage where your body perceives a stressor and acts in a fight or flight response. As a result, the sympathetic nervous system is stimulated to meet the threat or demand. The resistance stage is where the body begins to compensate. Your parasympathetic nervous system will be stimulated in order to balance the stimulation of the sympathetic nervous system. If the stressor becomes overwhelming and continues, the body is susceptible to disease or death, potentially at an extreme, due to an exhaustion of the body's resources. This is the exhaustion phase. An instance where this is likely is if you are a striker in football or a shooter in netball, because there's pressure on you to score, so much pressure on you to score that the stress can become overwhelming when you continually don't throughout the game, when you're continually missing. The symptoms of stress on the sympathetic nervous system. So the sympathetic nervous system symptoms are shown here on the left. This is what occurs in the fight or flight response. So blood diverts to the muscles to provide oxygen. For example, an athlete participating in long jump is actively contracting the muscles in their legs during both the run-up and the takeoff. This requires an increased supply of oxygen. Therefore, the supply of blood must be increased at the muscles to transport this oxygen and divert it from the digestive organs where it's not needed as much. Breathing rate also increases to supply more oxygen to the alveoli in the lungs for diffusion into the blood. An increase in breathing rate means an increase in regularity of the supply of oxygen to the capillaries. This means there's an increased supply of oxygen in the blood for arrival at the muscles. Similarly, the heart rate increases to make the blood flow to the muscles more regularly. This means the muscles are being supplied with oxygen more often, so they are less likely to experience fatigue and are able to deal with the stressor with more ease. A marathon runner, for example, would find this beneficial as they use aerobic glycolysis, which requires a constant supply of oxygen for the working muscles. Finally, there's an increased adrenaline to increase that heart rate. Adrenaline stimulates the increased heart rate for an increased blood supply. Sprinters often experience a surge of adrenaline as the starting gun fires. They have a sudden surge of stress to push off and drive out of the starting block quickly, meaning adrenaline increases to compensate for that stress, increasing heart rate and blood supply for the muscles. Parasympathetic nervous systems occurs after stimulation of the sympathetic nervous system in order to compensate for it and in order to relax. So here the complete opposite will happen. So instead of a dry mouth, you'll have an increase in saliva production, it constricts your pupils, you'll have a decreased heart rate, decreased body temperature, decreased breathing rate, your muscles relax, your metabolism slows, and you have an increase in digestion rate. So the increase in digestion rate is because the muscles are no longer contracting as regularly and there's not as much of a demand by the muscles. So the blood supply can surge back to the digestive systems where there was a lack of blood supply before. So digestion rate increases, therefore. Breathing rate decreases because there's no longer that maximal demand for oxygen at the muscles, which is the same reason for your decreased heart rate. There isn't that demand for oxygen anymore, so the heart rate and breathing rate can decrease, and your heart and lungs don't have to work as hard anymore. Yeah, and that's because your muscles relax, obviously. Finally, your body temperature decreases because your body is trying to prevent you from overheating, because your body has obviously increased in temperature during the sympathetic nervous system phase. So your body temperature decreases to try and compensate for that, to try and prevent overheating. There's less blood flow near the surface and on the skin, which means that your skin will feel cooler, and it will lessen in reddening, because sometimes some athletes will experience reddening on the skin due to the increased blood flow at the surface of the skin. Overall, the complete opposite happens in the parasympathetic nervous system. In comparison to the sympathetic, they have complete opposite symptoms. Stress management then. So a lot of the anxiety management methods will also help with stress management. One of these methods is deep breathing. So again, deep breathing decreases the heart rate to ensure enough oxygen is in the muscles. It also allows time to gain composure and kind of understand that the situation you're in isn't actually as stressful as you think. Another method is that positive self-talk. This helps override any negative thoughts or worries surrounding the competition or game, meaning you're less stressed because you're focused on the potential successes. You're not worried about the potential failures, you're focusing on the potential successes, meaning there's less stress around the situation. Similarly, mental imagery again can help with stress because it helps you replicate previously thought out successes, and then by imagining certain scenarios with a successful outcome, the performer is more likely to replicate that in the game as we act on memory of previous successes. Practice again can have the same effect. By repeating the skill, you have more instances of success to reflect on and use as muscle memory for future attempts at replicating that skill. These help settle your stress as the performer is picturing the potential successes while actively becoming more successful through practice. They begin to become more confident and have a lesser fear of failure. This lesser degree of anxiety results in a lesser degree of stress, because stress is obviously also generally, if you're trying to manage it, it's negative. So similarly to anxiety, which is negative thoughts, thinking about your successes will mean that you're not thinking negatively anymore, meaning that stress is managed. One that wasn't included in anxiety management is meditation, which is another method to reduce or manage stress. Meditation helps your mind decide which stresses are actually valid. By doing this, it allows your mind to become clearer as you have a smaller focus. You have a narrower range of stressors to worry about as you've discarded the irrelevant ones.